you haven't heard, Evan Longoria of the Tampa Bay Rays was voted to be an All-Star. My 18-year-old son had to tell me that on the way home, so it was a good thing. Okay, at this time, if we could have the three congressional candidates to approach the dais, and that would be Bob Hackworth, Max Linn, and Sam Simpson. Okay, we'll just have a seat. And while they're doing that, let me explain the ground rules for tonight's debate. Each of the candidates had faxed to them a copy of the ground rules, but I'll just to let you all know. They will be allowed to make a 2-minute opening statement. That statement can be made by the use of the podium or with the other mic. After the opening statement, though, I would ask that the candidates would use the other mic so that because it's closer to you all and you can move, do whatever you want to do in terms of sitting, standing, moving around. Okay, the questioning, the order with regard to both the opening and closing statement was drawn by lot. The questioning will follow in rotation. The questions came from a committee of the club. If there is any personal accusation made with regard to a candidate by one of the other candidates, or with regard to a position that that candidate has taken during the debate, that candidate who was at the receiving end may have a 1-minute rebuttal. So that's 2 minutes for opening statement, 2 minutes for answering any questions, 1 minute for rebuttal. Then there will be a 2-minute closing statement. In addition, we would ask that there would be no chanting or any sort of demonstration during the debate, in that these individuals are seeking one of the highest offices in the country, namely to be a member of the Congress of the United States. And the issues that we are going to be discussing tonight will be very important and serious. So I would ask that you would kindly listen to each of their answers. Okay, we will then begin with the opening statement by Bob Hackworth. And the 2 minutes will begin, and the person you would be watching, again, is Betty Morgenstein right here to my left.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here tonight. I want you to know that being an elected mayor, just like being a member of Congress, is really all about protecting the health and welfare and safety of the people that you represent. And as a mayor, I've honored that commitment and that duty. And I'm very happy with the proven record of success that I have as a governing the great city of Dunedin. Made a commitment when I first became a city commissioner to make sure that open and ethical government was the way that we conducted government in Dunedin. And I think I've kept that promise to the citizens that elected me. We made a real commitment, I think, in Dunedin to human rights, civil rights. Made a commitment to the environment. And I'm real proud to say that we've managed in this really tough time of budget and revenue cuts from the state, we managed to still provide our $90 million city budget without cutting any services to our citizens. And that was a testament both to the leadership on the city commission and also to our staff that has worked real hard to pull that off. I've run for election 3 times. I've won each time. Twice against great odds, especially the first time, and twice also against longtime incumbents, which is a little bit similar to the situation that we will face in the general election. So I take great pride in my accomplishments in Dunedin. I have been speaking to people all over Pinellas County for the last 8 weeks and knocking on doors. And I can tell you absolutely without a doubt that Pinellas County and the voters in District 10 are ready for a new breed of leader to send to Washington. They are ready for somebody who's going to work hard, improve the economy, take care of ending the war in Iraq, deal with soaring gas prices, and improve the economy. And I can also tell you that they see in me a true citizen legislator, somebody they will be comfortable sending to Washington and knowing that I'll be committed to doing the right thing for the right reasons. And so that's why I'm running for Congress, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Bob. Our next speaker, again drawn by lot, is Sam Simpson.
Thank you, Harvey, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm running for Congress for one reason, two reasons actually. One, to be a voice of the people. The voice of the people has been lost. We hear the voice of money, we hear the voice of power, and we hear the voice of greed, but we do not hear the voice of the people. And I'm running because I am a patriot. Now, what is a patriot? A patriot is not someone who has the biggest bumper sticker or waves the biggest flag. A patriot is not one who says, my country, right or wrong. And a patriot is not someone who has blind allegiance to an idea or an ideology or a party. This is what a patriot is. A patriot is someone who is willing to live or die, to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to protect and defend the liberties and the justice and the honor and the freedom that is found within and those things we have lost. And my name is Sam Simpson, and I'm running for Congress because I am a patriot, and I will be a voice for the Constitution and for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Again, I would caution, please, no demonstration during any answer. Our last speaker, who's making opening statement, is Max Linn.
Hello, everybody. I thought I would start with just introducing myself to the club. I've met a lot of you during the last 6 months, and I know the paper always puts me out as, you know, the rich guy. Well, I assure you, I didn't start off that way. I happen to be from St. Petersburg. My dad's from St. Petersburg, and if you go downtown in Williams Park, there's a granite memorial with my grandfather's name on it. So my roots are very deep here in Pinellas County. I remember back when I was growing up, it was not uncommon to see my mom making a decision between the food bill and the mortgage bill. I know what it's like to sit at the dinner table and in the middle of dinner have the lights go off. I ended up graduating and going to the junior college. I got the grants and the loans. I worked my way through college. So I know what it is to have nothing and then get out of college and build one of the biggest, most successful financial planning firms, independent financial planning firms, not only in the state, but in the country. I was fortunate to sell it in 2003 and step away from the financial burdens that a lot of us are still experiencing. At that time, and even before that, I've always dedicated myself to the tough fight. I led the statewide efforts for term limits in the 90s. I debated on the Supreme Court steps in 2000 with W.D. Childers, the longest-serving senator in Florida's history. After that, the Supreme Court unanimously upheld the will of the people statewide. After that, I headed up the statewide organization for Ideas Florida to get citizens running for office. That year, more citizens ran for the state legislature than any other time in the history of Florida. And W.D. Childers announced his retirement at my Ideas Florida. I look at what the situation is right now, and one of the things that inspired me the most was 2 years ago when I wrote a book about Barack Obama. I met with him, and I decided to take that step to run for Congress because I really think that 2008 and 2009 is really a turning point. And through the debate, I hope to separate myself from my other opponents. Thank you so much.
We'll now begin with the questions for the candidates. And the first question is this. Florida is surrounded on 3 sides by water, which makes it ripe for attracting illegal immigrants. What would your policy be on immigration? Please be specific. And the first speaker would be Sam Simpson.
In
1995, we had about 4.5 million immigrants in America. And when we changed our trade laws, when we did NAFTA, and we started sending our corn and our products down to Mexico, we put 2 million farmers out of work and a whole lot of other people. Their families began to starve, and they were looking for a place to feed their kids, and they came north. If we're going to change immigration, we have to realize that we're part of the problem, and we have to realize that we have to change our trade laws. You know, I have some birds in my backyard. I get all kinds of birds when I have all kinds of feed. There's bluebirds, there's blue jays, there's thrushes, there's hummingbirds, and when I have all kinds of food, there's all kinds of birds, and everybody's getting along. So when we look at immigration, yes, of course, we need to put some CEOs in jail and enforce some internal laws. There's no question about it. We need to protect our borders. There's no question about it. But when you look at immigration, it's an economy issue. It's a labor issue. If everybody had a job and everybody was happy, we wouldn't be having these kinds of discussions, or wouldn't be having these kinds of problems. Because when we have plenty of jobs and plenty of food for people, we'll start to get along a little bit more. So when I think about immigration, I really think about labor, and I think about jobs, and I think about our responsibility as Americans and the Congress's responsibility to create a comprehensive law, but at the same time redo our trade laws and stop forcing our products onto countries where we put people out of work and destroy and decimate villages. And that's part of what has happened with immigration. So I see it as a labor issue, an economic issue, and I think that we need to have a little bit more birdseed here. And I think we have to have a little bit more compassion. At the same time, I wouldn't mind putting a few CEOs in jail rather than rounding up a lot of workers that have maybe been in that town for 20 years. But I'm not sure with George Bush we'd have any CEOs in jail, but I wouldn't mind doing it.
Thank you. The next candidate to address this issue is Max Linn.
Thank you. My one grandfather is from Ireland, my other grandfather is from Russia, so I know about immigration. And it was one of the focal points in the third-party bid for governor a couple years ago. And what I found, that one of the biggest issues in immigration, the reality is the money's here, and I don't believe in building walls in America. So I would not be for that. And what happens is the people are coming over, they're taking our jobs, and if we want to put a stop to that, we have to address the employer. And one of the biggest things that's hurting not only the state but the country is not literally the jobs being taken, but the social services being used without them contributing. They're anchor babies. They come over, and a lot of times they use our hospitals, they use our social services, and that is adding to the bankruptcy of many hospitals and many of the social services. So what I would do, quite firmly, is saying that if you're going to come over here, which I think, Mary, let's face it, how many people here who have ancestors from other countries? I think a majority of us. So immigration is part of America. But what we need to do is we need to set the standards where if you're going to come over here and work, it has to be legally, and you have to contribute to the system. So that's the things that I would emphasize in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Bob Hackworth.
Well, thank you very much. I find that my two opponents in this race have spoken very eloquently to the issue. The immigration is part of the fabric of this great land. I believe that the position that's taken by Barack Obama is the right one, which is we need some comprehensive reform to the immigration policy of this country. We also, though, have to recognize that those who are here, even those who are here illegally, need to be provided a path to citizenship if they are actually contributing members of our society, because many of these people have not taken jobs from Americans. They're very much active participants in the American economy and contributing greatly to the economic strength of this country. And many of them have, even though they are illegal, have children who are legal because they were born here. And so you can't round them up, and you can't send them back, and you need to recognize the legitimacy of immigrants as part of our population. And so I think the position that Barack Obama has set out is the right one. I work very closely to make sure that that comprehensive immigration reform is passed by the next Congress. And I think with that, we'll be a much stronger country. We won't be going after, workers and trying to deport them back to countries that they came here solely because, again, they could not feed themselves in that country. And we'll be recognized around the world as being true to our original roots, which was a country of immigrants. So I'll support the Democratic nominee's position and make it happen instead of just talking about it, which is all that's been happening for the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. In recent days, it has been said that 70% of our oil is foreign oil. There have also been statements by the Democratic governor of Wyoming stating that in his state there is a large reserve of coal which could be converted to oil. And we just heard yesterday on many TV networks that T. Boone Pickens, the rich oil man, has said that he favors wind power. What would be your policy? Please describe. And we'll start this round with Max Linn.
Thank you. It just happens to be I have the T. Boone Pickens articles from the New York Times and different things, and this has been a real target of mine because energy right now with the economy is the cornerstone of what's happening. Right. And the reality is we hear of these businessmen from outside of politics, whether it's Pickens or Donald Trump, saying this is ridiculous. There's no reason we should be dependent on foreign oil. And to sit here and pump oil in the Gulf is not the answer. With every negative, there's some positive to be found. What this has done for the first time in my life, it's really made the people, and that's what these articles in the New York Times points out, that the people for the first time are talking alternative energy sources, and that's where it's got to start. Unfortunately, as some of these articles point out, specifically with T-Bone Pickens, he points out that everybody welcomes his ideas of alternatives except our elected officials. So I think the problem starts there. And it seems like what happens is the oil lobbies influence our politicians. They bring pork home and they influence us, so it seems like it's a series of getting bought out. I assure you, when I'm there, we will start an energy program that does exactly what these very rich, wealthy businessmen are talking about, and that is getting off oil dependency and turning towards electric, hydrogen, and wind, solar. All the alternatives are there, as these articles point out. We just need people in Congress, which I promise you, if you let me go as your representative, I will stand firm and I will not kowtow to the oil lobbyists. I'm not there as a career. I'm not worried about the tough fight. That's what my whole life has been about. And we will have an energy alternative here in this country, and I would love to lead that in the nation, because I really don't see any of our elected officials, Republicans and Democrats, doing that right now. Thank you.
Our next speaker with regard to this issue is Bob Hackworth.
When I announced my candidacy, one of the things I spoke of was the complete failure of the Republican Party to lead and govern. And I use an example of this preposterous idea that came out of our presidential nominee on the Republican side, Mr. McCain, and it was jumped on by Charlie Crist, our illustrious governor, and jumped on by State Senator Mike Fasano to put oil rigs off the coast of Florida. And it was just unbelievable, as the mayor of a city who had just been honored with the designation of having the #1 beach in America, Calabasas Island. To contrast that foresight, that wisdom of the mayors and the city commissions that came before me to preserve and protect that great island for the benefit of the citizens of Florida and tourists who visit here, to have that short-sighted, pandering answer come from a Republican was just, to me, offensive, and I spoke out immediately against it. We have no energy policy in this country currently under the Republican administrations, other than a guns and bullets policy in Iraq and in the Middle East, and that's just, again, offensive. We must have a comprehensive energy policy that recognizes that the
the supply of fossil fuels is limited and diminishing quickly. The demand is rising faster than any new supplies found would ever be able to demand. So the policy has to be to develop alternative sources of energies for this country's future. It can't come from T-Bone Pickens. It can't come from Bob Hackworth. It can't come from Max Linn. It has to come from a government that has the foresight and the wisdom to do what the mayors of Dunedin did 40 years ago and protect and preserve that which is most valuable to us. And so, again, there has to be a complete shift away from fossil fuels. There has to be the recognition that the alternatives are there, the technologies are there, and that we have to explore them immediately. It should have been done long ago, but it has to start immediately.
Thank you. And our last speaker in this round is Sam Simpson.
You know, this nation had this conversation before, back in about 1910, when Ford and Edison had everything figured out with electric cars, and there was this big discussion: are we going to go with internal combustion, or are we going to go with electric cars? And the bicycle cartels and the oil cartels, they got together, and we have been squeezed by big business and by big oil ever since. And I was in the gas lines in 1974 along with, you know, the rest of you, and I see a vision. I see a vision for a great transformation. Warren Buffett also is a savvy investor and one of the smartest men in America. He's buying wind farms. The transition and the upcoming green revolution, the market is so far ahead of the government. The free market is so far ahead of the government. We have everything right here in our hands to completely transform our world, possibly save our planet, and create a better life for our grandchildren. The green revolution that's coming is going to be bigger than the Industrial Revolution. It's going to be bigger than the Internet Revolution. But it is coming, and we're here and we're ready to go. My dad, when I was a little girl, owned a junkyard. We called him a dealer in secondary industrial raw materials. Now, what I see in my mind's eye are these huge recycling centers. And we bring our cars and we're going to trade them in for that hydrogen car, for that electric car. We're going to get a voucher and we're going to go away. We can do it, and we are going to do it, but the United States has to lead this movement. And when we kick out the oil and gas and the pharmaceuticals and the telecommunications and the healthcare consortium and the other lobbyists that are writing our laws, and we, the people, can begin to write our laws, we're going to see the greatest transformation in our lifetime. And I am very excited about that.
Thank you. We're up to the third question. Question number 3. Senator Obama, and it's 2 parts, I should say that. Senator Obama has stated he would like to withdraw our troops within 16 months, but he must talk to commanders on the ground to ascertain tactically how to do this. Do you agree or disagree, and why? And that's the first part. And the second part is Senator Obama has also said he would unilaterally meet with foreign leaders after proper preparation. Do you agree or disagree, and why? And we'll start out with Bob Hackworth.
Well, I absolutely agree with Senator Obama. I think he is a wise and foresightful man, and I think he'll make a great president of this United States of America. He inspires me greatly. I endorsed him way back in December when not very many mayors were doing so, and I'm proud to say that. His point about investigating with the military on the ground in Iraq, I think, is a valid one. It's a responsible answer. He said he's going to responsibly withdraw. He's going to get us out of there a lot more carefully than we were put in there, and I think that is the right answer. And your second part again was on the
Meeting with world leaders.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, he makes a very good point, which is that, talking to leaders, especially leaders who present a threat to our well-being and the safety of this government, is the prudent and responsible and the foresightful thing to do as a leader. And so I agree with him completely on both of those issues. I think he will do what he says he's going to do. I don't think there's any waffling on whether there will be an absolute positive
no questions asked, withdraw from Iraq from President Obama, and that position will be completely supported by Congressman Hackworth. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker will be Sam Simpson.
I felt the same way about this war in 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, but I just grieve a little bit more today. We absolutely have to be out of Iraq. Maliki now wants us out of Iraq. They won't sign the Status of Forces Agreement, and 70% of the Iraqi people want their country back, and we're going to give it to them. Now, of course, we have to talk to the generals. We have to talk to everybody in the world. We have to talk to the Syrians, the Arabians, the Jordanians, who have the biggest refugee mess that we created by our invasion. We are going to remove our troops, but what we're going to do first is we're going to say we're sorry. We're sorry for the destruction. We're sorry for the greed. We're sorry for the lies. We're sorry for the mayhem. We're sorry for the million death. We're sorry for the soldiers and what we've done to our military. We're going to say we're sorry. And we're going to create a truth commission or some kind of an international commission. And we're going to have accountability for those corporations that have ripped off the American public to the tune of $800 or $900 billion. And we're going to take some of that money and put it in international consortiums, like TRI International, companies that have gone into war-torn nations, and they've done this sort of thing before. The United States shouldn't make a dime off the rebuilding of Iraq. Should not make a dime. But we should contribute and help and minister to these people whose nation we have destroyed. Yes, in terms of speaking to Iran, absolutely. Did you know that Iran came to us in 2002 with everything that we wanted? There's a beautiful article in one of the Vanity Fair magazines about a couple of folks in the intelligence agency. Iran came, they delivered it. We'll give you everything we want. You can see everything we have. We'll open it up. Cheney said no. Bush said no. So what we have to do, Democrats, lovely folks, intelligent human beings, is to open up our minds and our lives and our hearts and see who are we? What are we? What do we need to do going forward?
Thank you. And the final speaker in this round is Max Linn.
I remember back several years ago when I started the Military Families Foundation. It's a foundation to aid military families in need. And I was going to do an internship at Walter Reed, and I went up there several times meeting with the Director of Family Services and just the atrocities of this war. So I've firmly been against the war before it started, when it started, and stay that way today. And one of the things that attracted me to Senator Obama early was he was speaking out against the Patriot Act. He was speaking out against the war that so few people were doing. And it seems like recently that McCain is calling him on waffling. And, you know, he may be, they're saying maybe perhaps he's moving to the center. As your next congressman, what I can assure you and promise you, that if he starts to waver on his promises, I will remind him the promise he made to the people, and that is to get out of the Middle East as soon as possible. And if the military people, in all their wisdom, say it's not right, that is his, as commander-in-chief, to go against them and say, I'm making the call because I'm the president, and the people put me in here primarily for one of the main reasons was getting out of the Middle East. So I would be there, and I know he'll remember me because back 2 years ago when I sat down with him when he wasn't even in the running, I had about 15 minutes with him completely alone talking about the book. And so I would remind him, number one, that we need to get out of there no matter what the military leaders say. Get out of the Middle East. And number two, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's just amazing to me to realize that if you really look at American history, I think that the Bush-Cheney administration really takes first place in the single worst administration in the history of America. And the reason why is because our complex society today needs, more than any other time in American history, is foreign policy and diplomacy. So I think it is wonderful that Obama wants to sit down with all the leaders who are our friends and enemies, so I would support that 100%. Thank you.
The next question, question number 4, which is to be addressed to each of you. is, why are you a better candidate as the nominee of the Democratic Party than either of your two opponents? And we will start, first of all, with Sam Simpson.
It's very difficult to judge one's self, you know, when you're trying to compare yourself with someone else and why you're better or why you're not better. But I will tell you this. I'm a human being just like you. I've never been in office before, but I've worked 25 years as a single parent, and I know how tough it is out there in the real world. I worked at Raymond James for 17 years. I was vice president of marketing. I worked at Pinellas County Economic Development. I've been educated in economics. I've interviewed hundreds of financial advisors, mutual fund managers. I know the answers are out there. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to stand up and shout the truth out. If I recall, I am the only person in this room that stood up against Bill Young in 2006. And what that means is I have courage, and I have vision, and I have leadership. I was out there when nobody else was out there. I was out in the streets talking about the loss of our Constitution, the loss of habeas corpus, the loss of civil liberties. I was out there, I was writing, I was vocal. What you need is someone who's not afraid to give their life, to lay it down. What you need is someone is out there who is a patriot. And I am a patriot, and I would adore to be your voice and to be your congressperson and represent the voice of the people. Thank you.
The next candidate to address this question is Max Linn.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to start by saying, you know, in a boxing match or a sporting event, you can be friends when the game isn't being played, but when you get in the ring, you've got to compete real hard, and sometimes you get bloody. So I'm going to lay out how I see myself different than my opponents. And first of all, I see myself as the only candidate up here who has made significant change in the state of Florida and taken up major issues and gotten results. I built one of the largest financial planning firms, not only in Florida, but in the United States. I then undertook and went against the legislature in the 90s and was successful in getting term limits. I debated some of the longest term politicians, Republicans and Democrats, fighting against term limits. And then headed up the largest voter movement in the history of Florida in 2000, when we had the largest, the greatest number of people running for office than any other time in the history. So my track record is one of taking on big challenges and winning. We also, just in 2006, I headed up the turning back term limits. They wanted to go from 8 years to 12 years. But we ended up even at the legislature handing out hearing aids to all the legislatures as they were coming in the opening day of session. The first time in Florida history that they took a term limits measure off the ballot. We sent over 10,000 letters out threatening to take them out. So my track record is taking the big fight. I took the big fight when I ran for governor. As third party, we walked away with more votes than anybody else, third party in the history of Florida. So I like the big fight, I like the challenge, and I'm up to taking on Bill Young, and I think I'm the only candidate that's realistically can beat Bill Young. So if I'm lucky enough to get your support on August 26th, I assure you, I will squash Bill Young like a tomato come in November, and I'd love the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
And our last speaker in this round is Bob Hackworth.
Well, thank you, and you've hit the nail on the head here. This is why we're here, is to determine who the best candidate is to take on Bill Young, because that ultimately is the goal, is to win. It's not to win this room tonight. It's not to win the primary in August. It's to beat Bill Young and replace him with people who will respect the need to change the failed policies of the last 8 years. And it isn't going to be easy, and they're going to take a real tall task. And you've heard a lot of us talk about what we're going to do, and you'll hear more about what we're going to do, but you're only hearing one person, and that's me, who says what I've done as an elected official, what I tried to protect and preserve and make sure that my community was safe and taking care of the welfare of the people. And I think that's really going to be an incredibly important distinction in the general election. It is going to be a matter of, you know, the arithmetic of this is you're going to have to be able to beat Bill Young by reaching out to independent voters and even some Republican voters. That's the math. That's the math that has won Bill Young 18 straight elections. He reached out to independents. He reached out to Democrats. He won those elections. He won 2 years ago against Ms. Simpson by a 2-to-1 margin. So I feel real strongly that the candidate who can present themselves as a credible leader who has some experience governing is going to be given the benefit of the doubt that it'll take to retire a 38-year incumbent. I'm the only person that can present that to the voters in the general election. And it is going to be the distinctive difference between myself and the other two candidates.
Thank you. Before we go on to question 5, both of the other two candidates would wish to make a rebuttal, and they have 1 minute. We'll start with Max Linn and then Sam Simpson.
And with Bob saying he's the only candidate that's done something, I tend to disagree. He's perhaps been a fine mayor of Dunedin. I don't think that qualifies him to take on a 38-year incumbent. The fact is, I am the only one with statewide experience in getting things and fighting huge groups called the Florida Legislature and some of the longest-serving politicians in the history of Florida. So I beg to differ that because someone's been a mayor of a community that qualifies him better than his other opponents. I think what you need up there is somebody who's not only going to fight the tough fight, but is also the reality he's been in office 48 consecutive years in office. Even though we know his questionable voting past, to say the least, the fact is he's really liked here in Pinellas County. And one of the sad things about politics is we need to get that message out. The message is going to take a lot of funding, and I think I have the best opportunity to get that message out through a grassroots movement and also through funding. Thank you.
And Sam Simpson would also like to issue a rebuttal.
Let's see, where's Harvey and Betty? This is a Democratic club, right? And this is a Democratic primary, right? Yes. I'm the only person up here who's been a Democrat longer than 6 months. And I think that qualifies me to be a Democratic congressperson. Thank you.
In the interest of fairness, not that they just said anything that they said. That was what they just said. So you don't make a rebut their rebuttal. That's right. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to question number 5. There has been much discussion about health care insurance for every American. What proposal or program do you favor? Please be specific, and we would begin round 5 with Max Linn.
Single payer!
Well, there's no question about it. The only answer is 676 single-payer health care, universal health care for all Americans, without a doubt. I think in Obama's heart, that's where he wants to go, but I think he's playing the political dance there, but that's where we need to go. We're the only industrialized country in the world without health care for all Americans. There's some things I believe in the private enterprise, absolutely, but there's a time when there should be private and public. We know that we have the fire department, the police department, public libraries. We should have universal health care because health care is a right for all Americans. And without question, you know, the few years campaigning going in people's homes and talking to them and seeing really the needs of so many people in healthcare. It's just ridiculous. They need to stay out, religion needs to stay out of government, and universal healthcare needs to come in, and also it can be affordable. We are at the bottom of the list as far as expense and inefficiency. We see just in the New York Times this week that doctors are now quitting, turning down Medicare and Medicaid patients. We need to turn healthcare around. This isn't a crisis, and it's time for all Americans to stand up and realize that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Thank you.
The next candidate to address this issue will be Bob Hackworth.
Well, I certainly support the idea that every American is entitled to universal, affordable health care. It's a program that I think that this country should have taken care of long time ago. I'm sorry.
Talk louder.
I certainly support any effort to bring about universal and affordable health care in this country. I think that the Barack Obama plan is a good one, and I will follow and support wherever he does want to take it. I think part of the problem, though, in the past has been the insistence on a single idea without recognizing that one of the failings of the current effort to change the policies has been a resistance to work to make it happen. And so people have been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and nothing ever gets done. So I'll try to work across the aisle and make sure that if there is some effort that needs to be done to compromise and make sure that something better than the current system is provided to the American people, that is a very great accomplishment on the part of this Democratic administration and the Congress of the 2009. So we have a system that truly is riddled with inefficiencies. It's riddled with fraud. It's a system that costs actually probably more than some of the very best universal programs that are provided by other Western industrial countries. We have probably the opportunity to provide coverage to everybody for the same money that we are providing coverage, leaving out 47 million Americans. And so I'll work very hard to make sure that that efficiency, that effectiveness, that taking out the fraud, taking out the profit making, taking out the excessive administrative costs that are currently in the system are eliminated so that we can afford to provide every American affordable health care.
Thank you. And our last speaker on this issue is Sam Simpson.
I've been endorsed by the group called the National Group, Progressive Democrats of America. It's a national group. And as an endorsee of that group, I absolutely endorse 676, John Conyers and Dennis Kucinich's bill. However, we need 60 votes in the Senate to make anything happen. So we're going to have to be really open to other kinds of ideas until we get to that place. But here's something to think about. Why is our society so sick? Why is diabetes the #1 disease? Why is there more autism than ever? You know, there's mercury in our vaccinations, there's aspartame in our soft drinks, and there's all kinds of genetically modified ingredients in the food we eat. So what I'd like to do, in addition to bringing health care available to everybody, let's take a look at the FDA, and let's take a look at some of the food that we're eating, and let's get Pepsi and Coca-Cola out of our schools, and let's create a healthier society. Let's talk about health. Let's make people healthier. You know, let's ban some pharmaceutical ads off of television. Yeah. Why don't we just do that? And let's just do some creative things, and let's help our kids eat better. And let's get rid of some of those subsidies for beef. So McDonald's you get for 99 cents and blueberries cost $4 a quart. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. People are making us sick. And I think we can do better. So yeah, we need health care. But we also need from the ground up to take back our food supply and to take back our government and to take back the FDA and the EPA and all those different things that are putting in our food and putting in our air. All kinds of things we can do if we get creative. But yes, 676, absolutely. But let's do more than that.
question number 6 is, it is a fact that many of the American people are suffering from increased foreclosures, small business failure, people being laid off, and foreign interests greatly increasing their influence in our economy. Stimulus checks have been sent out. What would you favor to revive the economy and to address these concerns? And we'll begin with Bob Hackworth.
Well, we know, in fact, our illustrious president knew that the token rebates that he sent in the form of stimulus checks were not going to revive our economy. We know that. There's evidence from when this has been tried before. I think everybody is feeling the evidence right now, which is it didn't work, won't work. To deal with our economy at this point, as bad as it's gotten under the last 8 years of the George Bush administration, is going to take a massive investment of money into infrastructure projects around the country. And it's going to mean that we're going to have to fund mass transit, we're going to have to fund roads and bridges, and it means that we're going to have to invest in an infrastructure that needs that attention. And yet it is an investment, it is not a spending of dollars that we don't have. It's an investment that will keep this country strong, it'll create jobs, and it'll work because it's worked in the past. And so all the evidence suggests that that's the right way to stimulate the economy. It's going to take ending the war, because that's $12 billion a month that's being spent overseas to build a nation over there, which we've already talked about. We're not even sure they want us to build their nation. We need to emphasize building our own nation. And we need to use the money that we have, the resources that this great country have, and the capacity that we have as a great nation to fix our own country. And I'm certain that we can do it, that we have that capacity. But it is going to take leadership. And what's been lacking is leadership. And it's going to take a vision, and it's going to take some foresight, and it's going to take thinking beyond what the poll that the Republicans are taking today say that the voters want. It's going to take some courageous leadership to do the right thing for the right reason. And so I'm certain we can do it. I'm very certain that with Barack Obama as the President of the United States and providing the leadership we need from the White House, that a Congress will support and do the right thing.
And the next candidate to address this issue is Sam Simpson.
Talking about the economy is kind of like, you know, you're at the top of the stairs and your shoelaces are untied and you start falling down and you get halfway down and all of a sudden somebody says, hey, your shoelaces are untied. When really what you got to do is you look at the stairs. You got to fix the stairs. We need fundamental monetary reform in this country. You know, why is it that people that miss an interest rate or a credit card payment all of a sudden get whacked with 29.9%? when banks can borrow at 2.5. Why is that? Why is that teachers making $40,000 a year pay $3,000 in Social Security tax, and a guy that makes $109 million a year pays, $4 for every $40,000 he makes? Why is that? We need some fundamental reform, and we need some new ideas. I mean, right now we've got pieces of paper floating all over the world, resecuritized, demonetized, swapped out. Nobody knows what anything's worth anymore. You know, it used to be you went to the bank and you know, when you go to the bank and you write down, I'm going to give you this house if I can't pay, then the bank can own your house and the bank makes more money off that loan that they gave you. They don't have that money. Fractional reserve banking is a real problem. And I say that if we want to redo our country, why don't we have Congress print some money? Why don't we have Congress print some money rather than going over to the Federal Reserve and have them print the money, and then we pay interest to the Federal Reserve? So there's a lot of things we could do that's a little bit different. And I also think that we need to make sure that these lenders and these congressmen that created these kinds of loans need to go to jail. Thank you.
And our last speaker with regard to this question is Max Linn.
The
the economy is one of my strong points as a certified financial planner. For the last 20 years, I've worked in economics. I've been to China, India, Japan. I was in Dubai last year. I was in Egypt. So I've seen this, and interestingly enough, what separates me from the other opponents, because as Bob Hackworth was up here, I didn't hear either candidate give one idea what they would do, and I will give you some ideas. Bob says we just need more infrastructure, spend, spend, spend. Sam says we have to fix the stairs. We have to fix the stairs. We miss interest rates. Teachers, she talked about teachers' pay. She talked about the banks and putting congressmen in jail. You didn't get one answer. What we need to do is we need to reform NAFTA. We can't have free trade, we need fair trade. And we have to put up some tariffs so it can create some jobs in this country immediately, because we're in dire straits right now today. And the only way we're going to increase jobs here is we have to put up some tariffs, and we have to bring and stop having our corporations hold our people hostage that by taking the jobs out of the country and then selling the goods back here. And secondly, we have to immediately put some incentives with real estate. For example, say, if you buy a piece of real estate right now, you can depreciate it over the next 5 years, and if you hold it for 10 years, you pay no capital gains tax. I didn't hear one of my opponents answer the question. I know this opens for a rebuttal here, but this is really serious, because number one on my agenda is the economy. And we have to create jobs here. The jobs are getting sucked out of America faster than you've ever seen. India, the Middle East, we see Dubai, we see China. They are developing the middle class while we are losing it. And unless this Congress acts immediately, unless the people stand up and say, we need fair trade, not free trade, we're going to continue in a deep, deep recession. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I very definitely heard that there were statements made about the positions of the other two candidates.
No, there was no statement made.
It was an opinion. I'll offer both Mr. Hackworth and Ms. Simpson a chance to offer a rebuttal if you wish. No? 1 minute.
I'm not sure, Max, what you didn't understand when I was talking about the increase or the decrease of the Social Security tax, or increasing the cap on that. I think that would help a little bit. I think the idea of Congress coining its own money without interest is an interesting idea that we should explore. When we're really talking about the economy, we're talking about the exchange of money for goods. I mean, we're talking about the value of something that we do with our hands. And I have the feeling that we're going to really go into an economic collapse. I mean, I don't think things are good right now at all. I'm very concerned. I'm suggesting that people get to know their neighbor, create some local barter economies. I mean, we may be coming into a very tough time. So while we go through this, I mean, part of the problem is Congress and the regulators in Wall Street, they do whatever they want. They create whatever they want. And we're left out of the mix. And we've got... Thank you.
I think before we have the final statements, we ought to thank all three of these candidates for offering their opinions. Now we will have the closing statements, which are 2 minutes long, and the first person is Sam Simpson.
I just want to say thank you very, very, very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. And thank you to Harvey and Betty for opening up your banquet hall and your club to allow us to come. My name is Sam Simpson. S-A-M-M is my first name. And I want to tell you how I got that name, because I changed it when I was 6 years old. I was down in the PTA room. I was in first grade, and there was a movie about a little boy named Sam. And he was really a good little boy. He went to the store when his mom told him to go to the store. He cleaned up his room. He went out in the yard and picked up the toys. Now, I don't know how bad I was at the age of 6, but I went home and I told my mom and dad, call me Sam, because I want to be good. I want to be good, so don't call me Denise, which is my real name. I didn't like that name. So they started calling me Sam. Now, in 8th grade, I added another M because I was a girl and everybody had a dog named Sam. And I was mercilessly teased. Now, what does this have to do with me running for Congress? I've always had this idea that people can be good. I've always had this idea that, you know, there's hope and there's justice in this world. I've always had this idea that things don't have to be mean and cruel, and you don't always have to go to war, and you don't always have to hose people down if they disagree with you, and you certainly don't have to tase them. I've always had this idea of equality and freedom and justice and liberty. You know, I think we need to find the good in us. We need to find the good in America. And I think we can, with brand new leadership. Not because you got a lot of money, and not because you've ever been elected again. Maybe it's just a person off the street who's lived a life. You know, maybe it's just someone who has a different kind of a vision and a voice for people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Max Linn.
I think the biggest laugh in the room tonight was when Sam said that she's the only person up here who's been a Democrat for more than 6 months. And, you know, I might say, since when does a party define a person? Since when does a party define a person? The fact is, I'm up here running for office because I want to see change in America. I think it's heading in the wrong direction. The reality is I've stood up to the big fights before. I want to stand up to this fight. My whole career has been in economics and financial planning, helping retirees, making sure they're secure in their financial well-being. My experience in the economics and financial planning that's been my whole career, so I put that up against anybody in the United States Congress today. I want to take that knowledge and take that experience and bring it home to the American people and say, let's focus on economics, let's focus on alternative energy, and let's get health care for all American citizens. If you're fortunate enough to support me on August 26th, I assure you, I will show you the best fight that Congressman Young has ever seen. And right now the tide is going against Republicans, and I know that without a doubt, when we expose his real record in Washington and his voting record, and I think that's what needs to be done, because a lot of people, you know, you're the leaders in the community, the Democratic community right here, but a lot of people are alienated from politics. They need to be educated and really look at this man's voting record. And I think that when elected as your nominee, that I'll be able to expose his record to all of the Democrats, all of the independents, and all of the Republicans. And I feel that we all have something in common, and we know what's right and what's wrong. And when his voting record is exposed by me, I assure you we can take him out and have one of the biggest upsets in political history, and I would love to leave the movement in Congress like I have in Florida for congressional term limits, because I don't think people should make it a career. Thank you.
And our final speaker is Bob Hackworth.
Thank you very much. It has been a real honor to be here before you to speak to you. I have, in fact, demonstrated the leadership and the experience to be a successful congressman. That is going to be critically important to the voters in the general election in November, who are faced with the choice to retire a 38-year incumbent in congressman, somebody who has been, in fact, well liked and loved and won 19 elections previous to this. It's not going to be an easy choice for them to send him to join George Bush in retirement. They're going to need to feel like that the person that they are replacing that leader with is a leader himself, somebody who isn't just talking the talk, but has in fact walked the walk. And so while Max and Sam may think that it's not significant, my leadership in Dunedin and running a small city, voters in District 10 find great significance to that. They are truly looking for a citizen legislator, somebody who actually understands what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they put together the House of Representatives and thought of sending a citizen legislator up to Washington temporarily, not forever, to take care of the people back home, because they were connected with the people back home. And so that is who I am. And you can scoff at it, and you can suggest that again, something defines me as a Democrat or previously registered as a Republican. But I have a record. I'm very proud of that record. I'll run on that record, and I am certain that people will, in fact, respond to the citizen legislator, the small business owner, the family man with kids enrolled in local schools, and they will choose me as the alternative to the 38-year term incumbent that they're retiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have 3 great candidates or what? This far exceeded anything that I expected, and I would be proud to vote for any one of the 3 candidates. And I want to thank you very much, and hope to keep in touch, and we'll help you on your campaigns all the way through. Thank you for coming.